Awesome. All right. I love that. What I really love most is the fact that we don't have to really ask you to invite people. Because I grew up in a place where it was like you had to, if you didn't invite someone, no one was showing up. But you guys, a lot like Acts, where the people just, they felt God's Spirit. And they just couldn't help but share it. And they couldn't help but bring their friends and tell everyone they know. And so you guys are awesome. Give yourselves a hand. Something I'm excited about, and I never in a million years thought I would ever be excited about. I'm excited about our new website. You ever, like, when you're growing up, like, you know what, I just can't wait to have a good website. Right? It never happens. But that's how I kind of feel. And I was reading this new book, Forgotten God by Francis Chan. I just started and I got into the first chapter, and the opening, like he does, like who he's thankful for the book and stuff, and the first thing he says is, wherever you're at, get a Clover site. And that's like the name of our website designer. And so like this book, right after we had purchased them, was like, you need to get one of these websites. And so it was just kind of a sign. I was like, yeah, I'm so excited that we're going to have a working website here. So where are my Seinfeld people? Okay, so like watched beginning, like has the season DVD, watched it from beginning to end. You know every episode, right? Now where are my Friends people? Like, cause that's now. I think I got a little more. Is that like are there crossover people there? Like that do kind of both. See, the only episode of Seinfeld the first episode I ever saw was the finale. I think I was in like the 7th grade. So that was the first one I ever watched, but it's still on late at night, and I can just turn an episode on and just kind of enjoy it, and it's funny, and kind of, what I don't need to know anything else about this kind of storyline. But Friends, if you've watched, I've seen every episode. Right, and you got the DVD set or whatever, and I used a DVR. I had like over 200 episodes DVR'd on my recorder at home, and it's amazing. Like, you can sit down still, like the same thing with Seinfeld, and just watch one episode and just roll, laughing. But when you have like the context of the entire series, you have an opportunity to really see the brilliant writing. Kind of thing. Same thing with kind of if you're my Lost people, you guys are with me, it's very evident. You can't watch one of those by itself and have any idea where you're at. But that kind of crosses over to where we're at going through the book of John. We started at chapter 10 last week, and we're moving our way through it. And so often I think what happens is we see the Bible as a collection of stories and a collection of chapters, but I'm not sure if you know this. I didn't know this for a long time. I assumed that John sat down and wrote out chapters and verses, and in every other sentence or wherever he put a number, and obviously, that is not how he wrote. He wrote it all as one large book. But in our heads, when we begin to read the Bible on our own, we just stop at the end of the chapter. Right? I mean, even if you're doing the Bible study with us, some of them, you stop in the middle of a chapter, you only read half a chapter. The book was written as one entire book. And so the idea is that the sermon on Easter is the story of Easter, the story of the resurrecting Christ, is a powerful, amazing story all by itself. But when you put the context of all the story leading up to it, and that's what we kind of started doing. We started last week in chapter 10. If you were here last week, there was this confrontation with Jesus and the Jews. And he had told them, he kind of revealed to them who he was. They asked him, who are you? And he said, well, I and the Father are one. And so there was this, remember, there's the stone, they're ready to stone him, they're ready to throw stones at him and kill him and capture him. But Jesus gets away. Right, and so it led us into the story of Lazarus, where there's this miraculous sign that Jesus uses to show the people exactly who he is. And so remember, John uses that word sign anytime Jesus does a miracle, because Jesus kind of can convey a message to us. It's not just that I'm doing these awesome, cool things, I'm moving you somewhere. I'm taking you somewhere to a decision, to an understanding of who I am. And so in John 11, he does this he resurrects Lazarus. And so in John 11 it says, this is where we left off. So from that day on, the Jews, the Pharisees, the priests, they plotted to take his life, Jesus. And therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the Jews. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the desert to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with the disciples. And so at this point, this is kind of where we left off last week. You guys with me? We left off right here last week, and Jesus, there are very few, at this point, middle-of-the-road people. There's very few. You're either with Jesus or you decide to go against Jesus because you've seen the amazing things, the signs that Jesus has pointed out, and you have had to decide. You couldn't just kind of walk the middle of the road. You had to get on one side or the other. And so we get to this point when in verse 55, it says, when it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple area, they asked one another, what do you think? Isn't he coming to the feast at all? And what you got to kind of understand, what you got to know is there's about 3 large parties or festivals that the Jewish culture was throwing then. There was Hanukkah, right? Pentecost, which wouldn't be confused with the Christian Pentecost. And then there was Passover, and Passover was like the Super Bowl of the Jewish festivals, okay? If you were there, you watched the Super Bowl, right? No one doesn't watch the Super Bowl, even if you don't like football, right? You guys are with me? Even if you don't like football, you watch the commercials, right? You watch the halftime show. Even if you're home alone, you turn the game on just so when you get to work the next day, you don't have to lie to people and tell them that you didn't watch the game. Right? Because what happens, have you ever been to a place where you're like, if you're at work, they're like, did you hear, John didn't watch the Super Bowl. Was he sick? No, he's just weird. That's kind of that's kind of the thing that's going on here. And so they're assuming that they're all looking for Jesus. They all want to know Jesus, find Jesus, because he's doing all these miraculous signs. And they know that anybody who is anybody is going to be at Passover, is going to be at this party. And so they get there about a week, before Passover, and this place is just flooded, wall to wall with people.